Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people? Or like your heart is craving connection but no one seems to notice? Imagine if the key to being truly loved wasn't about finding the right person, but about becoming the woman who refuses to settle for anything less than she deserves. In the next few minutes, I'll share the 7 rules every smart woman follows to move from loneliness to unshakable self-worth and how you can start living them today. Before you can truly invite someone into your life, you must first become comfortable with being alone. Not the kind of alone that feels empty or lonely or desperate, but the kind of alone that feels complete. Many of us fear silence. We fill our days with noise, chatter, scrolling, distractions, anything to avoid the quiet moments where we are left with our own thoughts. But those quiet moments are not your enemy, they are your guide. They are the space where you begin to understand who you are when no one else is watching, when no one else is expecting something from you. This is where self-respect is born. This is where the foundation of every healthy relationship begins. When you first sit with yourself, truly sit, you may notice feelings you've been avoiding. Maybe a dull ache of loneliness, a whisper of insecurity, or memories of past disappointments. Do not push them away. Do not try to silence them. Instead, welcome them with curiosity. These emotions are not weaknesses, they are messages. They are the parts of you that need recognition and care. To ignore them is to build a life where you constantly seek someone else's approval, their presence, their validation to feel whole. But to embrace them is to plant the first seed of self-worth. Think of solitude as a mirror. At first, the reflection may feel unfamiliar. You may be startled by the rawness of your own gaze, by the realization of how much of yourself you've been hiding behind smiles, routines, and people-pleasing. But that mirror is honest. And honesty is essential because love, real love, can only grow in the presence of truth. You cannot offer someone your whole heart if you have not yet claimed it for yourself. And you cannot recognize someone worthy of your time and energy if you are still searching for validation from shadows of your past. Embracing your solitude also teaches patience with yourself and with others. It teaches you that your value is not measured by who wants to be near you, or who texts you back first, or who notices your absence. Your value is intrinsic, unshakable, and independent of anyone else's attention. When you are comfortable alone, you become like a lighthouse, steadfast, illuminating, and capable of standing strong in the storms of disappointment and heartbreak. You no longer cling to relationships that dim your light. Instead, you attract the ones that harmonize with your brilliance. And here is the beauty of it. Once you learn to sit with yourself, to understand yourself, and to honor yourself, the world around you begins to shift. You no longer chase love desperately. You receive it gracefully. You no longer fear loneliness. You savor your presence, your thoughts, your dreams. You no longer settle for someone who cannot meet you where you are, because you have learned that your solitude is more than a space to be filled. It is a sanctuary. So if you are listening to this right now and you feel the ache of being alone, do not run from it. Do not numb it. Lean into it. Feel it. Understand it. There is a power in your solitude that no one else can give you, a strength that grows quietly within your heart, a wisdom that prepares you for love that will honor every inch of who you are. And once you discover that, you will never look at your own company the same way again. Because when you embrace your solitude fully, you are no longer waiting for someone else to make you whole. You are already whole. Once you have learned to sit with yourself, to be comfortable in your own company, the next step is to truly recognize your value. Not the value others assign to you, not the praise or attention you receive from the world, but your intrinsic, undeniable worth. The kind that exists simply because you exist. Too often, we spend our lives seeking validation from others, looking for someone to tell us we are enough. We search in their eyes, their words, their gestures, hoping they will affirm what we have not yet learned to affirm for ourselves. And when they fail or when they leave, We feel small, lost, incomplete. But the truth is, no one else can define your worth. That power belongs to you. Recognizing your value begins with a quiet, honest conversation with yourself. Look at your life, your choices, your dreams. Look at the way you love, the way you care, the resilience you've carried through hardships. Every moment you've survived, every tear you've shed, every time you've picked yourself up when the world seemed to push you down, these are the markers of your worth. They are not small. They are not insignificant. They are proof that you are a woman of strength, of courage, of depth. And yet, acknowledging this worth is not always easy. Society teaches women to doubt themselves, to measure their value by appearance, by attention, by what they can give to others. But you cannot give what you do not first recognize in yourself. You cannot expect to be cherished if you do not cherish yourself. You cannot demand respect if you do not first demand it from your own heart. Understanding your value is not about pride. It is about clarity. It is about seeing yourself without apology, without comparison, without compromise. When you step into this awareness, everything changes. You begin to notice the patterns in your relationships. You see the ways people may have taken advantage of your kindness, or dismissed your needs, or underestimated your voice. And instead of blaming yourself or trying harder to please, you begin to set a quiet, firm standard. I deserve respect. I deserve love that is whole, not partial. I deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. And you start to attract the people who meet you there, people who honor your worth rather than diminish it. Recognizing your value also transforms how you view your own choices. You stop apologizing for saying no. You stop feeling guilty for protecting your time, your energy, your heart. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. When you see your worth, you understand that boundaries are not restrictions, they are declarations. They are the invisible lines that tell the world, I know who I am, and I will not settle for less. And here is the most beautiful truth. Once you recognize your value, you no longer seek permission to be yourself. You no longer wait for someone else to validate your dreams, your feelings, your existence. You move through life with a quiet confidence, a sense of self-possession that others cannot ignore. You become magnetic, not because you try to be, but because you simply are. So, if you have ever doubted whether you are enough, remember this. Your worth is not negotiable. It does not depend on who loves you, who notices you, or who stays. It is built into the essence of who you are. Recognizing it is not vanity, it is survival. It is the foundation for every meaningful relationship you will ever have, because no one can offer you what you do not already see in yourself. When you truly see your value, you stop searching for it elsewhere. You finally understand that the love, respect, and appreciation you have been longing for were waiting inside you all along. Once you have begun to recognize your worth, the next step is learning the quiet, essential art of boundaries. Not walls built out of fear, not barriers meant to keep people out, but clear, intentional lines that protect your heart and your energy. Many women have been taught that love requires sacrifice, that kindness means tolerating hurt, that relationships demand compromise at any cost. But true love, the kind that nurtures rather than diminishes, cannot exist without respect. Respect for yourself and respect for the space your heart requires. Setting emotional boundaries begins with awareness. You must first notice when something feels off, when your comfort is compromised, when your needs are being ignored or dismissed. That feeling of unease is not a weakness, it is your intuition, your internal compass, quietly telling you that something is not aligned with your worth. And just as you would not ignore a broken bone or an infection, you cannot ignore this inner warning. To do so is to allow your life to be dictated by the expectations of others rather than the truth of your own heart. Boundaries are also a form of self-respect. They are the gentle but firm way of saying, this is who I am, and this is what I will not compromise. Saying no to a request that drains you, walking away from a conversation that belittles you, choosing not to engage in behavior that diminishes your spirit. These are not acts of selfishness. They are acts of love, directed inward, teaching others how to honor you. Without them, even the most well-meaning relationships can erode your sense of self, leaving you exhausted, resentful, and questioning your own worth. And here is the subtle power of boundaries. They do not push people away. They clarify who belongs in your life. When you hold space for yourself, you attract those who are willing to meet you there, those who respect your limits, value your time, and honor your heart. People who are not aligned with your boundaries will naturally fall away, not because you are unloving, but because you are honest. And in that honesty, you create a life filled with connections that are authentic, balanced, and nourishing. Boundaries also allow for emotional clarity. They teach you to distinguish between your needs and the needs of others, between generosity and self-sacrifice, between love and tolerance of disrespect. They give you the power to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, to choose relationships that serve growth rather than comfort, to cultivate intimacy without losing yourself in the process. It is important to remember that setting boundaries is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong practice. Some days you will feel guilt or fear for saying no. Some days you will question whether you are being too rigid, too demanding, too distant. And on those days, remember that boundaries are not about punishment. They are about protection. They are the invisible scaffolding that allows your self-worth to flourish, the gentle framework that ensures every relationship you engage in is built on respect, not desperation. So if you have ever felt drained, overlooked, or invisible in a relationship, ask yourself, where can I honor myself more fully? Where can I draw a line, not in anger, but in love for myself? Because when you start setting boundaries, something remarkable happens. You stop apologizing for your needs. You stop shrinking to fit someone else's comfort. You stop accepting less than you deserve. And in that space of quiet courage, you will find something extraordinary. The freedom to love yourself fully and the clarity to welcome only those who reflect that love back to you. Once you have learned to honor yourself through boundaries, the next step is cultivating emotional awareness. This is not a skill reserved for meditation or therapy sessions. It is a daily practice, a quiet vigilance over the heart, a gentle attention to the way your emotions guide your life. Too often, we let feelings pass like shadows, reacting impulsively, suppressing discomfort, or seeking to escape the weight of what we feel. But emotions are not enemies. They are not signs of weakness, nor are they problems to be fixed. They are signals, quietly, pointing the way toward clarity, connection, and growth. Emotional awareness begins with noticing. The moment you feel irritation, sadness, excitement, or joy, pause. Allow yourself to name it, without judgment, without the urge to suppress or explain it away. I feel hurt. I feel lonely. I feel anxious. I feel joyful. Each acknowledgement is an act of self-respect. Each acknowledgement is a moment where you reclaim control over your inner world. When you can see your emotions as data rather than drama, you stop being swept along by them and you start being guided by them. This awareness also teaches you to respond rather than react. In relationships, it is easy to be triggered by the words or actions of another. It is easy to feel defensive, to lash out, or to retreat. But when you are emotionally aware, you can pause in that moment. You can ask yourself, what is this really about? Am I reacting to this person, or am I responding to something unresolved inside myself? You gain the ability to communicate clearly, to act with intention, and to protect both your heart and your relationships. Cultivating emotional awareness also deepens empathy. When you understand your own emotional landscape, the fears, desires, insecurities, and joys that live inside you, you begin to recognize those same patterns in others. You listen more fully, you respond more thoughtfully, you create space for vulnerability without being overwhelmed by it. This does not mean you carry the weight of someone else's pain. It means you honor their humanity while maintaining the integrity of your own. Another crucial aspect of emotional awareness is understanding that your feelings are not fixed. They are not permanent verdicts on your worth or your future. Feeling hurt does not make you weak. Feeling frustrated does not make you unlovable. Emotions are fluid, like currents in a river, sometimes turbulent, sometimes calm, but always moving, learning to ride. Those currents, to recognize them and allow them to pass, is a form of resilience. It is the knowledge that you are not defined by your emotional storms, but rather by the way you navigate them. And when you cultivate this awareness consistently, something extraordinary begins to happen. You stop being at the mercy of external validation. You stop seeking reassurance from the fleeting opinions or moods of others. Instead, you anchor yourself in your own understanding, your own clarity, your own inner compass. You gain a sense of peace that does not depend on anyone else's behavior, a quiet confidence that allows you to act with integrity and compassion simultaneously. So, if you have ever felt tossed about by someone else's words, overwhelmed by your own feelings, or uncertain about how to navigate the complexities of your heart, start here. Pause. Observe. Name what you feel. Understand it, honor it, and let it guide you toward choices that reflect your truth rather than fear. Because when you cultivate emotional awareness, you no longer live in reaction. You live in understanding. You live in clarity. And you begin to move through relationships not as a passive participant, but as a woman fully present, fully awake, fully in command of her heart. Once you have cultivated emotional awareness, the next step is learning to prioritize growth over approval. This is a lesson that many women never fully grasp, because we live in a world that constantly tells us to seek validation, to measure our worth by how others perceive us, to mold ourselves into versions that are palatable, convenient, or admired. But the truth is, no amount of external approval can substitute for the quiet, enduring satisfaction of becoming the person you were always meant to be. Approval is fleeting. Growth is permanent. Approval is a mirror reflecting someone else's expectations. Growth is the light that reveals your own path. Prioritizing growth means choosing the path that challenges you, even when it is uncomfortable. It means pursuing your dreams, your values, your passions, not because someone else will cheer you on, but because you recognize that your life is your own. It is easy to compromise in order to please others, to accept relationships, opportunities, or roles that do not serve your evolution. But when you prioritize growth, you learn to see those compromises for what they are, distractions from the life you were meant to create. You begin to invest your time, energy, and love in ways that cultivate who you truly are, rather than in ways that simply maintain the comfort or approval of those around you. This practice also transforms the way you engage in relationships. When growth becomes the priority, you no longer stay in situations that stunt your development. You no longer bend or shrink to meet someone else's expectations. You begin to surround yourself with people who reflect your desire for growth, people who challenge you, support you, and inspire you to expand. And because your motivation comes from within, you no longer need constant reassurance or applause. The quiet satisfaction of knowing that you are moving forward, that you are becoming more of yourself, becomes more than enough. Prioritizing growth over approval requires courage, because it often means making choices that are unpopular, misunderstood, or even opposed by those you care about. But growth always comes with this cost, and the alternative, living a life dictated by others' opinions, is far more painful in the long run. Growth asks you to trust your intuition, to honor your vision, and to accept that not everyone will understand your journey. But in that trust, you discover a freedom that no validation can ever provide. You discover a woman who is self-directed, resilient, and unshakable in her purpose. Another profound aspect of this principle is the way it reshapes your inner dialogue. You stop asking, "Am I enough?" and start asking, "Am I becoming enough?" You replace the desire to be liked or accepted with the desire to learn, evolve, and thrive. You understand that every experience, every challenge, every heartbreak, every joy is an opportunity to grow, not a judgment on your value. This shift in perspective is subtle, but it changes everything. It transforms disappointment into lessons, failure into insight, and love into a reflection of your evolving self rather than a measure of your worth. And perhaps most importantly, when you prioritize growth, you create a life that others naturally want to be a part of. Not because you demand attention or admiration, but because your authenticity, your courage, and your commitment to becoming your best self radiate outward. People are drawn to growth because it inspires them to reflect on their own potential. You stop chasing approval, and instead, you live in a way that invites respect, admiration, and genuine connection, not as a goal, but as a natural consequence of your evolution. So if you have ever felt trapped by the opinions of others or weighed down by the need to be liked, remember this: growth is your birthright. Approval is optional. The woman who chooses growth over approval is the woman who walks through life fully awake, fully present, and fully empowered. After learning to embrace solitude, recognize your value, set boundaries, cultivate emotional awareness, and prioritize growth over approval, you arrive at the most profound lesson of all: choosing love that mirrors your worth. This is the love that does not ask you to shrink, does not demand you compromise your integrity, and does not leave you questioning your value. It is the love that reflects back to you the respect, appreciation, and understanding that you have cultivated within yourself. It is not perfect, because no human love ever is, but it is whole, and it is aligned with the life you have worked so diligently to build. Choosing this kind of love begins with clarity. You've learned to recognize what you need and deserve, and you carry that awareness into every connection you form. You understand that love is not a bandage to heal your loneliness, a remedy to soothe your fears, or a validation to prove your worth. Love, when it is real, amplifies the strength you have already developed. It complements your life rather than fills a void. It supports your dreams instead of overshadowing them, and it honors your boundaries rather than testing them. When you choose love that mirrors your worth, you no longer settle for the easy, convenient, or familiar. You no longer ignore red flags or rationalize hurtful behavior simply because you are afraid of being alone. You no longer compromise your joy for the sake of a relationship that does not nurture you. Instead, you become discerning, patient, and intentional. You understand that true connection cannot be rushed, that it cannot thrive in chaos or disrespect. You understand that the right person will meet you where you are, not demand that you meet them where they are. This love is deeply reciprocal. It is a partnership where both people grow, support, and elevate each other. It is a relationship in which your happiness is not contingent on someone else's, and their happiness is not contingent on yours. You do not lose yourself, and neither does your partner. Instead, you create a space where two complete people come together, each bringing their fullness into a shared life. The balance of respect, admiration, and care is natural because both parties have learned to cultivate these qualities within themselves first. And here is the subtle beauty of this kind of love. It arrives not as a result of desperation or longing, but as a reflection of the woman you have become. When you have embraced solitude, recognized your worth, set boundaries, cultivated emotional awareness, and prioritized growth, you radiate a quiet strength that is impossible to ignore. People are drawn to it not because you demand their attention, but because your life demonstrates clarity, self-respect, and authenticity. The love you attract mirrors this truth. It matches the value you have recognized in yourself. Choosing this love also requires courage. Sometimes it means walking away from relationships that are comfortable but not aligned, familiar but not nourishing. Sometimes it means enduring periods of loneliness while you wait for the right person, rather than filling your life with someone who diminishes your light. But that courage is simply another extension of all the lessons you have already learned. The woman who chooses love that mirrors her worth is the woman who refuses to settle, who refuses to dim her fire, and who refuses to forget what she has cultivated within herself. So if you have ever wondered whether true, sustaining love is possible, remember this: it begins with you. The love you deserve is not about luck, chance, or timing. It is about the reflection of the value, strength, and integrity you have worked to nurture. When you choose love that mirrors your worth, you are no longer searching for someone to complete you. You are choosing someone who honors the woman you already are. And in that choice, you find the freedom, the joy, and the fulfillment that comes when love finally feels like a reflection of your own truth.